Imagine, like, 1.8 million jobs just vanishing from the economy overnight.
Yeah, that is a staggering number to even visualize.
Right. And taking $87 billion in income with them. I mean, you would think an economic event of that magnitude would be headline news everywhere.
Well, absolutely. Wall Street would be panicking.
Exactly. There'd be emergency press conferences, legislative packages getting drafted. But what if I told you that exact economic crisis is happening right now in 2025, and the national unemployment numbers are completely hiding it?
I mean, it sounds impossible until you actually look at the structural data beneath those top-line national averages.
And that is exactly what we are doing today. So welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at a fascinating piece of source material by Niambi Emanuel.
Yeah, it's an excerpt from an article titled The Black Jobs Crisis, DEI Rollbacks, AI Displacement, and the New Economic Exclusion.
Right, which is actually Article 4 in a much larger 10-part series called the 99% Perspective. And that series really examines the intersecting economic pressures currently crushing working families.
And the author's research offers this highly detailed look into how macroeconomic shifts are affecting specific demographics differently. So our goal today is to pull back the curtain on those standard employment reports.
Yeah, to look at the actual mechanisms driving this hidden crisis. Because our mission today is to look beyond just, who has a job and who doesn't. We are exploring how recent economic shifts act as structural barriers to long-term wealth building.
Right. Specifically focusing on how they threaten employment stability and ownership opportunities for Black Americans.
Exactly. And just a quick note for you listening, as we dig into the corporate policies, the government changes, and the DEI rollbacks mentioned in Emmanuel's research, we are going to objectively unpack the mechanics of what the data is showing us.
Yeah, we're looking purely at the economic functions and consequences here.
Right. We're not taking or endorsing any specific political viewpoint. Okay, let's unpack this.
So, to really understand Emmanuel's argument, we have to start with a fundamental shift in how we view employment. I mean, we typically view a job as a simple transaction, right?
Yeah, like you trade your time for a paycheck to cover your immediate living expenses.
Exactly. But structurally, a job is the foundational engine for long-term wealth building.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the basis for your credit stability, your ability to borrow, and eventually your ability to own assets.
It's basically the financial equivalent of compounding interest.
Yes.
Because if your employment foundation is solid, you can weather a temporary financial hit. But Emmanuel makes this really powerful assertion that for families facing an existing racial wealth gap, a job loss doesn't just mean tightening the household budget for a few months.
No, it triggers an immediate structural collapse.
Right. It spirals into a housing crisis, it destroys credit scores, and it creates like a literal generational setback.
And the mechanism driving that rapid spiral is the lack of inherited wealth. Because when a demographic has historically been locked out of property ownership or generational wealth transfers...
There's no safety net.
Exactly. There's no family trust or home equity line of credit to float you through a 6-month job search. You are forced to rely on high-interest credit cards or predatory loans just to keep the lights on.
Wow, which just introduces expensive debt that compounds the damage long after you secure your next position.
Right. And the credit scoring algorithms heavily penalize that kind of utilization, which then locks you out of prime interest rates for years.
That makes total sense. And the 2025 data Emmanuel provides shows how fractured that employment stability has become. I mean, let's look at the numbers here.
Yeah, they're pretty stark.
In December of 2025, Black unemployment reached 7.5%, which the source notes is the highest level since October 2021.
What's fascinating here is how national averages actively mask localized or demographic-specific economic stress.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you looked at the broader national picture in 2025, the economy appeared incredibly resilient. But the Joint Center, which is a think tank that focuses on demographic economic trends, reported that the average unemployment rate for Black workers in 2025 was 6.9%.
And for white workers, it was 3.7%.
Right, it's nearly double.
It's staggering. And the peaks are even more alarming. The data shows Black unemployment hit 8.2% in November of 2025. Meanwhile, the national overall high for all workers was sitting at just 4.5%.
So you essentially have an entire demographic experiencing a severe, localized labor market crisis.
While the overall economy looks completely fine on paper.
Which brings us back to those 1.8 million missing jobs you mentioned at the start.
Right.
The Center for Economic and Policy Research, an economic think tank that analyzes these structural labor shifts, they calculated what they call the Black jobs deficit.
Okay.
And in 2025, Black America needed 1.8 million more jobs just to achieve parity with white employment rates.
And the estimated cost of that deficit is $87 billion in lost income. But I actually want to pause on that, $87 billion.
That's a huge number.
It is, and we tend to hear large numbers like that, and they just wash over us. Let's think about how that missing money ripples through the broader U.S. economy. I mean, that isn't just missing paychecks.
No, not at all.
That is $87 billion that is not being spent at local grocery stores. It's money not being deposited into regional banks.
Right, which means those banks have fewer reserves to lend out to other small businesses.
Exactly. It means a massive drop in local sales tax revenue, which funds the public schools and the fire departments in those specific communities. It's just a macroeconomic drag.
It strips the entire local ecosystem of its financial velocity. I mean, money needs to change hands to generate economic health. So when you pull $87 billion out of a specific demographic, the surrounding commercial infrastructure stars.
I want to use an analogy here to illustrate the wealth-building impact of this deficit. Think about it like playing Monopoly, right?
Okay, I like a good board game analogy.
So the goal of Monopoly isn't just to collect your $200 when you pass go. I mean, the goal is to use that $200 to buy properties, build houses, and compound your wealth.
Right, that's how you win.
Now, imagine you hit a string of bad luck and you are forced to skip several turns. That skip represents this 1.8 million job deficit.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
While you are sitting there skipping turns, everyone else is still moving around the board. They are buying up the available properties. They are building hotels.
And the prices are going up.
Yes. You permanently miss the window to buy those assets at their original price. By the time you finally get back in the game, the board is entirely bought up. Now you can't buy anything, and you have to pay rent to everyone else just to exist on the board.
That is, the lost wages are simply the missed turns. The actual crisis is the permanent inability to buy the property.
Exactly.
It is the missed years of 401k matching contributions, the delayed home ownership while interest rates climb, the inability to let your savings compound in the market.
It's brutal.
That is how a temporary gap in employment transforms into a permanent structural barrier to long-term wealth building.
So we have established this massive gap in employment stability. I guess the logical next question is why? Like, why is this happening so acutely right now?
Well, Emmanuel's research points directly to the erasure of the middle-class safety net. Specifically, the rapid erosion of traditional, historically stable pathways that marginalized communities have used to enter the middle class.
Right, and the author highlights the profound impact this erosion is having on Black women.
Yes.
Because the Economic Policy Institute, which tracks these kinds of labor trends, noted that Black women suffered massive employment losses in 2025. Which is a critical blow because Black women are historically key household earners, primary caregivers, and really vital community stabilizers.
And the detail that really stands out is who exactly among Black women was losing these jobs.
Yeah, it was predominantly college graduates and public sector workers. Emmanuel notes that federal employment alone fell by 277,000 jobs in 2025.
Which is huge. We need to examine why public sector jobs have been so historically crucial for wealth building.
Let's do it.
If we look back to the post-WWII and civil rights eras, government employment provided something the private sector often did not: strict, objective pay scales and formal grievance processes. They offered immense stability, predictable wages, solid health benefits that protected families from medical bankruptcy.
And robust retirement pensions.
Exactly.
And those are the exact financial mechanisms you need when you sit down with a mortgage underwriter. Like, a bank's algorithm wants to see long-term, stable, predictable W-2 income.
Yeah, doesn't want to see volatile gig work.
Right, or unpredictable freelance income. Public sector jobs have effectively served as the primary underwriting engine for securing mortgages and long-term ownership for Black Americans for decades.
So when you look at the federal government cutting 277,000 of those jobs, driven by budget austerity and shifting administrative priorities, you are not just trimming operational overhead.
No.
You're actively dismantling a major bridge to the middle class. You are removing the exact type of employment that banks historically favor for capital lending.
You know, I have to voice a frustration here that I'm sure you listening are feeling right now.
Oh, I can guess what it is.
We have all been sold a very specific narrative about how the American economy works. The story goes like, play by the rules, take on the student loan debt to get a college degree, secure a stable government or corporate job, and you will be economically secure.
Yep, the classic American dream formula.
But if college-educated workers and government employees are the primary ones losing jobs at this rate, doesn't that completely shatter that narrative? It feels like the rules of the game were fundamentally changed while people were already out on the field playing.
Well, the frustration is entirely justified by the data. The credentials that were marketed as universal shields against economic hardship, like a university degree, they're proving to be insufficient against these new structural shifts.
Yeah.
The economy is restructuring in a way that simply bypasses those traditional protections.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the erosion isn't just happening in government. Emmanuel points to a massive technological shift that is actively dismantling entry-level employment stability in the private sector as well.
Right, we are talking about the rapid integration of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
AI is fundamentally restructuring corporate roles across almost every sector. I mean, we are seeing it in administrative support, customer service, marketing, finance, and human resources.
Everywhere.
Historically, tasks like vendor onboarding, basic accounting reconciliation, scheduling, and preliminary data reporting required human workers. Now, enterprise software integrations are automating those functions entirely.
And Emmanuel makes a vital argument here that we rarely hear in tech circles, which is that AI displacement is an economic justice issue.
Because the tech industry often frames AI as like a helpful co-pilot, right? That just removes tedious, boring tasks from our plates so we can focus on higher-level strategy.
Right, the fun stuff. But the source points out that AI is actually eliminating the roles themselves. It is eradicating the administrative assistants, the project coordinators, and the entry-level accounting clerks.
And those specific roles matter immensely because they are the corporate entry points. They are how workers get their foot in the door of a major company.
Let me use another analogy to explain the mechanics of this. Think of corporate advancement as climbing a ladder. The promise of automation was that it would act like a jetpack, making the ladder easier to climb.
Right, a productivity boost.
But what automation is actually doing is sawing off the bottom 3 rungs of the ladder entirely. Now, the executives and managers who are already halfway up the ladder,
They are perfectly fine.
yeah, they can use AI tools to increase their productivity and climb even faster. But for marginalized workers who are trying to get onto the ladder to build stable wealth, they cannot even get a foothold to start the ascent. The entry points have simply vanished.
That analogy perfectly captures the structural problem because those entry-level jobs are not just about doing data entry. I mean, they serve as critical training grounds and networking hubs. It is where a junior employee learns the internal proprietary software of a company. It is where they get invited to sit in on cross-departmental meetings. It is where they catch the attention of a senior vice president who eventually becomes their mentor.
And if an algorithm is doing the entry-level work, a human being never gets the chance to prove themselves to leadership.
Exactly. Emmanuel notes that Black workers may already face systemic hurdles regarding access to informal hiring networks or legacy professional connections.
Right.
So by completely removing the lower rungs of the corporate ladder, companies are locking these workers out of advancement before they even get a chance to interview. The pathway from an entry-level desk to middle management is being digitized out of existence.
Which brings us to the ultimate consequence of all this, the direct threat to ownership.
Yes.
Because the destruction of employment stability inevitably bleeds over into the destruction of ownership opportunities. If you cannot get a stable job, you cannot buy a home. And if a community doesn't have stable income, the local small businesses collapse.
And Emmanuel draws a very direct mechanical line here to the reality of DEI rollbacks.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right. DEI has become a highly charged political topic, but the author stresses that we need to look past the rhetoric and examine the actual economic function of these corporate programs.
Yeah, because the argument is that these rollbacks are not just about a company changing some language in its employee handbook or dropping a seminar. They eliminate real, tangible economic access points.
Absolutely.
We are talking about the removal of diversity recruiting pipelines, targeted internship programs, and formal mentorship initiatives.
And crucially, this connects directly to business ownership. Because one of the most significant yet least discussed components of DEI initiatives has been supplier diversity efforts.
You know, I have heard the term supplier diversity thrown around in corporate PR press releases, but how does rolling that back actually bankrupt a local catering company or an IP firm? Break down the mechanics of that for us.
Okay, let's look at enterprise procurement software. When a Fortune 500 company or a government agency has a supplier diversity program, They often configure their procurement systems to ensure a certain percentage of their lucrative contracts for logistics, construction, catering, or IT services are awarded to minority-owned businesses.
Okay, so it's baked into the system.
Exactly. It is an intentional routing of capital.
Hmm.
So when DEI policies are rolled back, those specific parameters are removed from the procurement software.
Wow.
Suddenly, a Black-owned logistics firm just stops receiving the request for proposal emails. They are quietly bypassed by the algorithm. That directly cuts off minority-owned businesses from massive, reliable streams of corporate revenue.
And that creates an incredibly destructive local feedback loop. I mean, let's trace the mechanics of this together. First, you have job losses in the community, driven by the public sector cuts and the AI displacement we just talked about.
Right.
That means local families have far less discretionary income.
Which leads to an immediate drop in consumer spending at local Black-owned retail stores, restaurants, and service providers.
Right. So you combine that severe drop in local consumer spending with the sudden loss of major corporate and government contracts due to the DEI procurement rollbacks.
It's a double hit.
Yeah. Then you factor in high interest rates making small business loans prohibitively expensive, alongside cuts to community development grants. These small businesses are being financially starved from literally every possible direction at the exact same time.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Emmanuel is identifying a phenomenon they call the new economic exclusion.
The new economic exclusion.
Yes, it does not look like overt old-school discrimination. Nobody is standing in a doorway blocking access. Nobody's putting up a physical sign saying you cannot bid on this contract. Instead, it takes the form of entirely neutral business decisions.
Neutral on the surface, meaning hidden in the bureaucracy.
Yes, a corporate budget cut to human resources. An AI algorithm screening out resumes that lack specific expensive credentials. A software update to a government procurement system. The automation of an administrative department to save on overhead.
All very standard stuff.
Evaluated on their own, each of these actions seems like a standard, justifiable efficiency measure. But the practical, cumulative result is that economic doors are being quietly but permanently closed for workers and businesses that were already fighting an uphill battle for access.
It's like the compounding interest of exclusion. I mean, the broader economy shifts, the labor market reorganizes around AI, and the demographic structures that were already vulnerable take the absolute brunt of the financial damage, all while the national unemployment averages make it look like everything is perfectly fine.
And the data presented in the source leaves very little room for ambiguity. The result is a systemic, multi-front threat to long-term wealth building. It jeopardizes housing stability, business ownership, and the ability to transfer any accumulated wealth to the next generation.
Let's bring this all together. We have covered some intense ground today, analyzing Nyambi Emmanuel's research.
We really have.
The 2025 Black jobs crisis, as outlined by the data, is clearly not a temporary dip in the business cycle. It is a structural crisis.
Completely structural.
It is driven by the convergence of massive public sector cuts that are erasing the traditional middle-class safety net, AI displacement that is actively sawing off the bottom rungs of the corporate ladder, and rolled back diversity initiatives that are choking off vital revenue streams for small businesses. So what does this all mean?
This raises an important question, and it requires us to look beyond just the immediate labor statistics and examine the long-term trajectory of the modern economy.
Right. If the traditional entry-level jobs and stable public sector roles have been the crucial stepping stones to building a financial foundation, the foundation that allows generations to step onto the property and wealth ladder, what happens next?
It's the big unknown.
Yeah. If automation permanently eliminates those roles, if algorithms completely replace the entry points and corporate pipelines continue to narrow, how will the next generation fundamentally generate wealth? If the bottom rungs of the ladder are gone, will we have to entirely rethink the connection between traditional employment and asset ownership in the future economy?
It is a profound structural challenge that the entire global economy is going to have to reckon with very soon.
It truly is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.